This is Jerry Jung, and in 2021, this guy earned a perfect score on his A-Push exam. And he was one of only 6 students out of 400,000 who took this exam to get a perfect score. So I bet you wouldn't mind knowing Jerry's secret sauce for remembering everything he learned. And it's not what you think. He's not just a genius who can flip through a book and instantly know everything. He worked incredibly hard for that score, and he used a study method that mere mortals like us can use too. It's not complicated, you just have to do it. Now, I introduced this in a short earlier this week, but here I'm going to explain it in detail. And if you adopt this method, you can get the score that you want on your AP exam. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. Now, before I tell you what the method is, I need to tell you why it works, because if you understand the why, then you're more likely to put this method to use. Now, when I was 16, my first car was a manual transmission. And let me tell you, learning to drive that thing was rough. All right, let the clutch out, a little more, a little more, oh! I could not get that thing to move without doing myself and my passengers serious bodily harm. But then someone drew a diagram of how a clutch works to engage the transmission. This thing here is spinning, and when you release the clutch, it meets this part and engages the transmission. So if you just jam it in there, it's turning too fast and the friction is going to shut it down. But if you just ease it in slowly, then the light friction gets it spinning, and then you start moving without any. Man, I tell you, as soon as I saw with my eyes what was going on under the hood, it only took me a couple more tries and I got it. And so if you're going to study and actually remember what you study, then you need to have a similar diagram of what's going on inside your brain, and if you can see it, then if you're like me, you'll be more likely to use this method because you understand it. So the way the brain learns anything is by creating what are known as neural pathways. You've got all these neurons in your brain and they communicate with each other. When you attempt to learn something new, it's like these two nerve endings are speaking different languages, and so the neural connection is weak. So the first time you try to learn the Monroe Doctrine or the Khmer Empire or Renaissance humanism, these two guys are not understanding each other. Monroe Doctrine? What you talking about, Willis? But the more you force these two foreign neurons to interact, the more they begin to understand each other and speak the same language. Or switch the metaphor. When you start to learn something new, it's like you're being plunged into a thick forest without any path to get from point A to point B. The more you study using this method I'm about to show you, the more of a path is formed. And as you continue to study, trees start to get taken down and the path widens, and then even more study leads to a full-blown paved road between these 2 points. And if you have this running through your brain, then you will remember dang near everything you study. Okay, so that's how it works. Now let me show you the method that will create this strong path in your brain. So the method to actually remember everything you study is called active recall. And there's a mountain of science to back this up, so listen up. This could change everything for you. And here I'm just going to talk about the method. Next week, I'm going to publish a video that will tell you exactly what content you need to know for your exam and what content you forget. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Now, think about how a typical student studies. You got an exam coming up and there's a metric buttload of information you need to remember. So what do? Well, most students will read their notes or look over a textbook or watch a bald-bearded, gap-toothed man flap his mouth hole on a YouTube video or something like that. And you're putting some work in, so it feels like learning. But to paraphrase the great philosopher Ted Lasso, I hate to tinkle on your toenails, but that ain't learning. And you know this because when you show up to that exam, all that information that's just barely hanging on in your brain falls into the abyss as soon as you get to that first question. It's because you haven't actually created that pathway through the woods by cramming. Now look, I've been doing this a long time. I know exactly the kind of comments I'm going to get below. @ToeFlosser73 is going to say, all I did was binge your videos the night before the exam and I got a 4. And hey, that's great. Who am I to judge? But I'd be willing to wager that there was an awful lot more behind that score than just a few hours of binge watching. Like you had a good teacher, you've been practicing all year, etc., etc. But look, even if not, I'm not here to force you in anything. I'm just trying to persuade you that the method I'm about to show you works 100%. So active recall is the process by which you force your brain to recall the information you wish to master. And here's how you do it. Step 1, read or watch a single bit of information that you need to know. Now, step 2, reformulate that information in your own words. This is the step almost nobody takes, but this is the place where everything changes in your brain. At this point, close your notes or pause the video or whatever and say that information in your own words. And there are 3 ways to do this, and each is better than the last. First, just do it in your mind. Second, say it out loud, which is even better. Third, and best, is to write it out by hand. Again, lots of research about how writing by hand helps with recall. Now listen, the first time you try to reformulate that information in your own words, you're not going to do very well. What you talking about, Willis? It's going to feel very difficult, and that means you're doing it right. But you can't quit at that point, because what's happening in that difficulty is that initial contact has been made between those 2 neurons that will be responsible for remembering that bit of information. And that initial contact takes a lot of energy. So then go back to the information and watch it again or read it again, and then try to reformulate it in your own words again. And the more you do this, the more those neurons communicate and the wider the path becomes. And once you can articulate that information in your own words without looking at the source material, you've got it. If you can do that a little bit every day between now and exam day, you'll be on your way to 5-town, baby. And this is exactly what our boy Jerry did. His studying strategy relied on brief sessions of study and frequent reviewing. You know what that's called? active recall. Now, I know this sounds like it's gonna take way more time than the kind of studying you're used to, and ain't nobody got that kind of time. But listen, you're already gonna spend some time studying, and if that time is spent cramming all at once instead of practicing active recall, then those are really just wasted out. And if you don't believe me, let Jerry tell you. He said cramming is not only insanely inefficient, but it also means that you retain information briefly, so you may as well not have studied it all. Oh, Jerry, you talk tough, but you talk true. All right, next go check out this playlist here, which has all kinds of different videos to help you study for your AP exams. And make sure to subscribe because I'm gonna be publishing a ton of videos in the next few weeks to get you ready for your exams. I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.